Community is an ecosystem. I was noticing that these people's projects and the people that then they attracted had their own unique diversity. And the more that you would zoom into that diversity and sort of go to the individual, you would find even more richness and even more of their own unique offering. And people, when they really found that sense of comfort and safety and belonging, which is a really important piece to it all, started to open up. From the person that works in agriculture on their farm, for the person that works trying to create larger scale businesses, there's this thread for me which emerges that those natural patterns want to come through. And it's nothing to do with the thing itself. It's nothing to do with actually trying to build an organisation which can serve a broader purpose. It's the way in which we, as the people within the organism, respond and react to that which wants to emerge through. The greatest system that's ever been created is quite literally life.
What makes community? And why is it such an important piece of the puzzle of regenerating our societies? These are questions that I've been bouncing about with for several years, and I've decided to focus on them a little more intently in this season of the podcast. And so I couldn't have been happier when I found myself travelling to stay at Soul last month, a new community hub in West London, which describes itself as an entire village in a building, where they are reimagining urban existence. It was wonderful to immerse in this very unique environment, and I was thrilled to be able to chat with Jordy Johnson whilst there, so I could share these insights with you all. Jordy is the head of community at Soul, and he brings a very heart-centred, nature-connected approach to community, which is filled with depth, and no doubt brings experience from his prior roles, which he also touches upon in this conversation. What makes community? Well, I think you'll feel all the wiser after this one. I'm Helen Fisher. This is We Are Carbon, and throughout Season 4 you'll find new weekly conversations as we keep digging deeper and explore what it means to step into regenerative actions within our own place, creating health and vitality for ourselves, our communities, and the natural world around us, and really igniting a new zest for life. Be sure to subscribe to keep up to date, and check the description for more opportunities for becoming involved. Enjoy the conversation.
So I'm Jordy Johnson, head of community at Soul, and where we are now is in the recording studio at our Southall branch of a conscious co-living / community project that we are beginning to put the first steps in place to really reimagine urban existence. And the vision here, this is an old converted Hyatt hotel. We now have over 100 people that stay here with us, and it's really to bring back and almost synthesize the new and old way. It's like there are these patterns and these structures that have existed for forever in human history that now really feel as though they are calling very loudly to be brought back into the modern world, so that we can begin to find a new way to live in harmony with self, other, and nature. And nature for me is it's an interesting thing, because we think that nature is only of the organic, and for me nature is within all things, and it also exists within the city landscapes. It also exists within technology. It exists within every single aspect of life itself. So really, when I say that we're trying to reconnect to self, other, and nature, it's the way in which that we, in communion with one another, can really reconnect to that fundamental principle that we are all the same one thing. And that's what's beautiful here, is that it's really inviting a lot of diversity with so many different beautiful human beings that are bringing through their uniqueness. We're very early days. We opened on the 15th of November 2024. Already it's just been this really beautiful opening. We've had our challenges, as new projects always do, but what we've really found is the resilience of the community, and the way in which, when people go through things together, it creates even more depth and stability. So it's been an incredible journey so far, and that's what we're doing. And not to ramble on too much, but this project is one of a number of other projects as well that are happening within the UK that I think are really important to mention as well, which I see as a movement which is happening, which is a really potent and profound and important thing, which is almost the re-emergence of what is, not to try and find, too complex of a way to say it, but really it seems like a revolution of self. It seems like people really coming back to the fundamentals, and this is present in projects like Medicine Festival, Soul Revolution Festival, Wider Horizons, which is a transformational gathering for young adults in nature, Primal Gathering, Love Jam, and all these different communities that are sort of, now really coming to this forefront of this movement that's happening in the UK. Gives me a lot of hope in a world in which seems a little bit bereft of hope at this moment in time. So I come from a slightly different lens than perhaps most, in as much as that I'm incredibly hopeful and have a deep belief that actually everything in nature's way is perfectly placed for us to create a more beautiful world.
Thank you. That's lovely. And I feel that there's been something very synchronistic about me being here. When I was invited to support the Wayapa workshops with my friend Debbie, the whole journey of connecting with Debbie being somebody that I've met online. We didn't know we lived so close together, and we realised that, we do. So we have been able to weave together on projects, and she's helped me to bring the work that I've been doing with We Are Carbon into a more place-based relationship within myself, to think, okay, how does this come together into something meaningful that people can take action on, not be overwhelmed? Because like yourself, this project is very much from a place of hope. It's from that idea that we can thrive because we inherently know how to thrive because we are nature. And everything that is in nature, when we look, take the time to understand and observe, it shows us that nature knows exactly how to be abundant, how to keep regenerating, and it just needs a little bit of help sometimes, because we've taken things so far away from its natural state. But that really has brought me to this sense of natural regeneration in the natural world is a path that intersects with regenerating community. And when I was invited to support Debbie all the way in London and be part of that she was sharing, I didn't know what the venue would be, and I jumped at the opportunity because of course I would come and support her, but to then learn that it's in this location, I thought, well, I've got to experience this, I've got to understand this, because intentional community, I think, is a difficult thing. I think that there is a calling for it, but there's not a blueprint for it. It's just as difficult to figure out how to navigate bringing people together harmoniously as it is to understand nature and regenerate an ecosystem. And I think they need to be potentially thought of the same way. And I really find something very unique here. Is there a kind of a picture behind it, or is it just let's kind of go and see where the wheel takes us?
For me, a personal philosophy that I've developed with my community work across the different projects that I mentioned before is this piece around community as an ecosystem, which to me was really born from seeing all the individuals that were sort of heading up these projects and seeing how every single one of their projects was an expression of who they were in their purest form. And this led to like a deeper inquiry of then seeing the people that were attending the events or festivals or attending, the community gatherings, or just the people that were in that community in general. And there seemed to be this sort of flavour, this energy, this essence that, was kind of beyond what you would see. And there were certain things that you might see, that would sort of create like a group that might have certain cultural norms or words that they might use, but there was something deeper that I really started feeling into. And from there, being between all these different projects, it started to become quite apparent that actually that there are own unique ecosystems. You know, in the same way that you might find a different ecosystem or biome, you know, in the forest than you might in the Sahara Desert, for example. In the same way, I was noticing that these people's projects and the people that they attracted had their own unique diversity. And the more that you would zoom into that diversity and sort of go to the individual, you would find even more richness and even more of their own unique offering. And people, when they really found that sense of comfort and safety and belonging, which is a really important piece to it all, started to open up. And in that opening up, their own unique gifts would come forward. People would discover things that they'd gone their entire lives never really having a safe space to express. And when these gifts start to come through, you know, whether it be, you know, someone that didn't know they were a musician, or someone that didn't know that they loved to craft, or someone didn't know that they, you know, were very operationally minded and loved to work with the logistics of organising events, you know, all these different varieties of the ways that people express themselves when they actually find their way seem to become totally apparent. So there was this similarity that sort of bonded people within the community, but then also this uniqueness that was only possible when they'd found that belonging within that broader group. So this for me just started to really allow me to tune into this philosophy, which then, you know, for my vision of a community here in the Southall location, which is where we're at the moment. We've just had a new location open up in Shoreditch, which is more central London. The vision for this one particularly for me is that, yeah, community is an ecosystem. And how can we really make people feel safe enough? How can people feel that they belong? How can we really encourage and allow people to find their unique voice? And what comes through for me is this thought of, you know, the note in the symphony. It's like people can, you know, live a life where their note is playing in discord. Something doesn't quite feel right in the way in which they're expressing themselves. And it's not down to the individual. Oftentimes, there's definitely a call for the individual to step into deeper levels of responsibility to find their own way, which really is a listening to the call of nature, essentially. And not just nature, again, as in organic nature. I always make that distinction because, again, for me, nature is all of life. There's no separation there. So it's like, what is your true nature calling for you to do? What is your natural self? Who is your natural self? And then within that, finding self-awareness and really coming back to those fundamentals of what it was that made us feel alive as a child, or that piece within us which feels a great expansion when we're drawn, you know, into certain situations or with certain people. You know, those pieces follow that expansion. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think through that communication with life, we begin to then play our note. And that note then is made so much richer because of the symphony that can then be played when we find our space within a community of other people playing their unique note. And then all of a sudden we find that symphony of community. And I think that's really the beauty that we can find when we lean into what it means to be human, which is actually to be connected, and not just connected to the individuals around us, but, you know, the entire orchestra of life itself and all of nature. And in finding that, we start to begin to realize that at the moment, we're living under this story, it seems. The shared human story at the moment, especially in the West, is that we're the destroyers of nature. Mm-hmm. You know, and there's this ignorance which sort of has almost created this lack of belief and this hopelessness, which then creates stagnation. And stagnation, you know, it doesn't create anything but dis-ease or, you know, a sense of, just destruction. And actually it's to find a way to move back into motion. And again, it's something that, you know, you mentioned really beautifully on your, you know, in your meditation about the importance of reciprocity. And through that realization and the dissolution of that line of separation, we've naturally fallen into mutual reciprocity, not just with the human community, but the earth community of all beings, all plants, animals, you know, the landscapes around us. The entire biosphere. So I think that, that's for me personally, that's my sort of personal view. It's not the sort of the organisation's view, if you like, of ANSOL, but it's definitely something that, you know, they've been incredibly open because of the way in which we, as a community ourselves as a team, you know, really invite diversity on that level. And there's been this really beautiful merger. There's a couple of other, you know, people that work on the project that have come from this sort of movement that's happening within the UK. Some really incredible human beings. And it's just this beautiful piece of when you're doing things with people that share that common vision and share that inspired approach to life, that things start to happen in a different way. And it might not be the most scientific thing, but these synchronicities that go so much further than the rational mind can see, things start to become possible that otherwise would seem impossible. And that's where the magic really happens. And I think that comes from community as well. It's like, when you find yourself around the right people in the right way, more synchronicities start to occur. There's more possibility for the impossible to occur within these spaces. So yeah, it's definitely been a beautiful journey, but that's just a little bit about my own personal expression within the community space. Yeah.
And it's a very, very powerful expression. It was so much packed into that. And I had questions coming up, and then I kind of moved on to other questions as I was listening, because I think that you just said it so clearly. There is so many different ways that we can look at the problems in the world, and we can see ourselves as the creator of the problem, the destroyer, and then actually we step into an energy of something that's causing us discomfort. So we're not really going to step into the solution. And I think we're programmed to point the finger. And if it's not at other people, it's at ourselves. And that is just where we have reached. We've reached this place where we need to fix the world because we've done such a terrible job of destroying the world. And whether we feel that anger towards ourselves or towards other people, other generations, people outside of our what we can reach, it's still the same energy. It's still coming from a place of, I need to fix this, I need to be the savior, I need to figure it out from the mind. And all of that takes you away from what you described as finding your note, which is so beautiful and clear. When I talk to people about regenerating the land and working with nature, so often it comes through that is healing for the individual, and that they come out of their shell and they find their note, as you would describe it, because they're experiencing what it is to be human again, making space, observing, quieting the mind, and allowing something new, just that little bit of space for something new to rise. Because as I said at the start, nature knows, and we're nature, so we know. And community within that is complex, but you described it wonderfully. And the way that I think I'd like to sort of delve into this deeper is bringing the mind in a little bit. You've brought a project together that isn't you, it's you and your experience from all of these other inspiring projects and the connection you've had to the land. And it's you being given the reins or being given some sense of freedom within a project that's very well funded, that has the means to offer the resources and the opportunity that they in of themselves, you've described, would not necessarily be the same vision. And I think that is part of the systems change that we need as well, is those different roles being valued and not, well, we're different and therefore we stay separate and we don't belong together. I find that there's something really interesting in that. So this project is kind of, I suppose, almost celebrating 6 months, and there must have been a lot of learnings in that. And you say there's a new one opening, so there must be a lot of success within it for a second one to be hot on the heels. So where is that coming from? Is that just very well-minded people? Is it coming from projects prior to it that have inspired that this is the way to invest? Why do you think that, what's birthing it?
I think that there's this natural unfolding that I seem to be very blessed to witness. And again, it's like the community within the team, sort of these incredible human beings. I'm so lucky and blessed to be working around like every single one of us here that, work within not just in the Southall project, but the Shoreditch project as well. There is this sense of inspired, vision that comes through and from, and we have, navigated a lot of challenges. It will be said that with anything new and anything that really wants to be different in the culture, in the current zeitgeist, then, I think that there's sort of all the doubts and all the things that can emerge and arise as you're going along that path. And I think that that's where the mind can get a little bit lost, is that I think that, the mind is an incredibly useful tool. And, we are so driven by the mental energy. It's the energy of discernment, it's the energy of separation, which holds a really important role, actually, when we're creating these things, because it is important to distinguish, structure. It's really important to distinguish people's responsibilities. It's really important to distinguish, how we're actually going to scale and grow something that essentially, in my view, really does provide this absolutely incredible opportunity for us to really reimagine how we coexist together, especially in city landscapes. And I think that this is the piece there that rests within that, is that, unless we were all really steadfast on feeling this shared vision, then when it comes into those difficult times, then you don't lean into them. And this is the same piece that happens within community, and it's the same piece that we now need to lean into as a humanity, which, if we're unable to really lean into those moments of challenge, if we're really unable to look at the mess that's been made, as a species, then all of a sudden we can't take responsibility for that. And I think that the culture here as an organisation is one of taking responsibility and to actually be very open to feedback, to actually be willing to, put in the work and then also simultaneously reap the rewards, and, find that balance and flow of working together in a way in which you're all, better in each other. Everyone has their own unique piece that they're offering to the team, and everyone's helping each other develop in that way as well. And it's been really interesting for me because my previous work hasn't been as structured in an organisational way as this. Obviously, festivals and events and community work definitely hold structure, but I think that there's this misnomer around seeing organisations as unnatural, in a sense that we've sort of seen the capitalist world and we've pushed it, we've definitely excelled it in certain camps, if you like. And for me now at this moment in time, it's sort of trying to find a way to actually, from the person that works in agriculture on their farm, for the person that works trying to create larger scale businesses, there's this thread for me which emerges that those natural patterns want to come through. And it's nothing to do with the thing itself. It's nothing to do with actually trying to build an organisation which can serve a broader purpose. It's the way in which we, as the people within the organism, respond and react to that which wants to emerge through. So it's like we're the channels almost, and our own stuff gets in the way of how that natural piece wants to emerge. It's like if we're not willing to take responsibility, if we're not willing to naturally lean into what nature wants to teach us in terms of systems, like the greatest system that's ever been created is quite literally life. And those patterns are reoccurring. And it's the mind that then gets in the way, and perhaps it attaches itself to a certain image or a certain identity or a certain stubbornness or an inability to lean into where we need to see parts of ourselves which are currently a little bit, sticky, or they're in the shadow and we're not willing to look at those pieces. In the reclamation of those pieces that we've pushed away to the outer edges of our psyche, to bring that through and take responsibility, we can then allow the natural systems to start to re-emerge, which again is exactly the same as someone working on the farm as it is for someone working in the city trying to create this organisation. It's like the willingness for the human to actually lean into those pieces and to view it from that lens is that nature's constantly speaking through us and we just need to move out of the way. When we do that, then what is natural will want to emerge and will emerge. So I think for me there's that distinction, which is that, again, through the view that nature is everything, not just organic nature, that if we're really willing to listen and allow the mind to settle, then it's still important. It's not to destroy the mind or to destroy the ego or to destroy anything, in fact. It's to learn to find a deeper harmony with all of those pieces and to take radical responsibility for the parts of ourselves, which perhaps can create, a little bit of a skew in the picture, when actually to find that deeper alignment allows the natural pattern to emerge, no matter what it is that we're creating.
Yeah, very, very wonderful. And I think that not everybody will be ready to hear what you've just said, but I think that there's a huge amount of wisdom in that. And my thought on people trying and trying. That word trying, I think, is important that I've said that. They're trying to build community. They are coming as though diversity is something that it's a wonderful thing to celebrate, so long as we're all on the same page. And when people have their own needs, their own agendas, agenda being a negative word, it's like, no, we need to put that to one side. Our own agendas need to be out of the room as we come together. But that's not how nature works. It's like saying, well, the bee should come along and it should be able to pollinate the plants, but it shouldn't say, I would like to be fed. And that's where diverse needs make up community, because if everybody was the bee, everybody had the same thing to offer, you have to put your agenda aside because there's too much desire for that need. But when you're all bringing a different thing, then you're just exchanging. And there's a lot of just this mirroring that I can see between the ecosystem and the community and the internal self even. And I think that it's a wonderful merger, and I wonder if you have experienced, it sounds like your background, you are very connected to nature. Do you think that the people in this space where they're gravitating towards the idea of building community and being part of community, is that nature connection inherently a part of that interest, do you think?
Yeah, I think that people that are drawn to community are definitely within themselves connected and have that pull and draw towards nature. And again, I think for me it requires that lens of seeing nature not just as organic nature. I think it requires us to lean into our human nature and that which is as present in all universal languages, whether it be food, music, connection, dance, body language, the way in which we communicate, through our breath. I think that there's something within our own human nature which then starts to begin to allow us to connect deeper. So I think that there is this direct correlation between community and nature. And you mentioned before that we don't have a guidebook for community, or so it seems. The guidebook is nature. And I think that for me is where that sort of guidance comes from, is that there's something within us that has, been experienced through cultures around the world for thousands and thousands of years, where we've sat in circle and we've shared stories around a fire or around, sharing food together or through music or through connection. And that's where we've forgotten human nature. And that's where this remembrance begins to come through, is that in finding our way of how we relate through one another, we can then begin to reimagine and to rediscover what these structures are that want to be born into the world. And through the remembrance of self is the remembrance of these structures, and through the remembrance of these structures is the rebirth of community. And the rebirth of community, to me, will allow us to find our unique gifts, and these unique gifts fit perfectly into the puzzle of how we need to try and bring the world back into balance. And I always find this conversation a particularly tricky one, because it suggests, and again, this is another radical viewpoint that perhaps people won't all necessarily agree with, and that's okay. But I think that there's a trick that we've played on ourselves to suggest that nature ever did anything wrong in the first place, and that we as humans seem to have this hubris and this belief that we were powerful enough to ever supersede nature in the first place. And I actually think that that's just another trick of the mind. I think that nature has so perfectly created everything, even the apparent mess that we're looking at today, in a perfect design so that it can make shifts, changes and evolve. And a beautiful analogy for this is the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly, and the way in which the caterpillar, when it's first born, and this is the story of the hungry caterpillar, eats and eats and eats all the greenery around itself, destroys all, and just consumes and consumes and consumes until it starts to go through a death process. And in that death process, it quite literally loses its own head. And then it starts to harden, and its cells within itself actually, I think it was Dr. Elizabeth Sahtouris, who she is part of the Scientific and Medical Research Network. She came up with this term, the imaginal cells, and the imaginal cells that exist within the potentiality of a butterfly are already inherently there within the genetic coding of the caterpillar. And they quite literally go to war with the cells of the caterpillar. So upon this death process, the caterpillar cells go to war with the butterfly cells. So it's actually at war with itself, as we are today and have been for thousands of years, at war with ourselves as a species. And it's only through that process that actually the perfect conditions are met, so that then what starts to happen is that, obviously, inevitably, according to nature's design, the butterfly cells, destroy the caterpillar cells. Within that goes into the chrysalis and cocoon and starts to develop this new form. Then what's even more astonishing is the way in which the cocoon is designed with perfect mass and density, so that the wings of the butterfly can meet that resistance and start to break free. And it actually breaks free from the cocoon with the perfect level of resistance so that it can now become this new form. If you were to put a slit in that cocoon, the wings would break free, but they wouldn't be strong enough to fly. If you added any more pressure onto that cocoon, the wings wouldn't be able to break out. And I think this is one example of nature's perfect design that kind of signals to us that actually nature is so intelligent in all the ways. And actually, there's this piece, the ancient Egyptians, their word, nature, was the direct translation for God or spirit. Neter was the word. They had no separation. And I mean, what does spirit mean? If we were then to connect the word nature to spirit, well, spirit means breath. And when I was listening again to your meditation, it's this beautiful piece of reciprocity that keeps coming up. And it's very emergent. And again, what's happening when we're in breath with nature, when we release the carbon and the trees take in the carbon and recycle it as oxygen, and we breathe in the oxygen, and actually there's this reciprocity that is in ever flow with life. So for me, there's that piece of actually just the recognition of our oneness with life. And again, it is of, a certain experiential lens, and perhaps the mind can't make sense of what I've just said, but to me, it's this felt feeling. And I think it's that felt feeling which creates the inspiration for us to move towards trying to really create something which works, not just with certain subsections of culture, but within all culture, through all the shared languages, because we all share this same one planet. And I think that it's our greatest responsibility and purpose as human beings to really begin to rewrite the human story as guardians of this planet and not the destroyers.
It was a fabulous story with the butterfly. I had not heard it. I didn't know that the cells were at war, and listening to that is, wow, very, very extraordinary. I mean, you can put your lens on any aspect of nature and really both learn from a kind of mental place, but also just be in awe of the perfection of it. But that is so, it feels very representative of so much of being human in that experience. And thank you. That's shut me up a little bit, kept me quiet, but I really appreciate all of your insights. I think it's such a beautiful wisdom that you've shared with everybody. And just to kind of pick up the pace here at the end, I'd like to touch back on some of the festivals that you mentioned earlier on. And just it sounds amazing, like there's a whole movement out there, there's a whole world out there. Have you got a few recommendations for people?
Yeah, there's so many in the UK that I would recommend, and I think that what's important is finding the community that exists between all of them. And if you've got the space and time, like I would really recommend like going and experiencing multiple of these events and festivals. If you're a young adult and you're really interested in exploring some more of these kind of community-based systems, or you just want to sort of try out the field and it's your first gathering, event called Wider Horizons, really close to my heart. It was the start of my journey, and yeah, phenomenal event in nature. It's almost like summer camp meets small festival, and you're in this beautiful natural wilderness on the Ways Inn estate, and yeah, it's phenomenal what you experience there. It's kind of this cross-generational dialogue as well. You have the youth that kind of go there from 18 to 30, and then you have elders that are there, which is fundamentally something that's missing as well in our current structures within the world, is that, and I won't go off on a tangent, but to have that actual, ability to communicate. We've got one of the elders there, Leah Rutherford, who's turning like 100, I think, very soon, and just to have those communication with someone that's lived an entire life and holds that wisdom and is deeply connected to nature, through different shamanic practice. And that's just one example of hundreds of different opportunities that come from Wider Horizons, for example. We've got on the same land the solstice and equinox events, which are perfectly in time with the season cycles, just to open and close kind of the gates of that land. Medicine Festival, we've had a year off this year. We've raised nearly £100,000 now for Indigenous cultures around the world, for their preservation, and they all gather in Reading Ways in offering all their different sort of music and just shared experiences through workshops, and just it's an incredible celebration that happens once a year in August time. And then you've got Soul Revolution Festival, another one really close to home, quite literally. It's my very close friend Alex who started Soul Revolution Festival. I work very closely with Alex on the launch of turning that into the weekend-long festival, and it really is just of a salt of the earth, grounded festival, which happens in the Midlands. So it's Weston Park, which is near Shrewsbury. I would 100% recommend that festival. Absolutely incredible. And then finally, Love Jam as well. And Love Jam's really about creative, unique expression and authenticity. And, all of these events that I've mentioned are non-alcoholic as well, so it's really about clarity of connection and experiencing, these kind of this sober way of being as well, which is really beautiful, because you just find a very different kind of experience when you're actually present and you're there, and life starts to open up to you in a different way. And Primal Gatherings, probably the other one I mentioned as well, which is a wonderful event based around regeneration, nature connection, and land-based skills as well, which I think would be quite relevant to your listeners as well. So I definitely recommend that they check out all of those projects. There's something for everybody. And it's just something so beautiful to see how all of these different pieces are coming together to create something incredibly special. So it's an exciting, next part of the journey, I think, is what's going to be happening in the UK.
Amazing. I had no idea there was so much, and I'm going to be looking up everything you've just talked about there, and be delighted to share any other ones that you think of, because we all, give you 5 minutes and there'll be more, no doubt. But people can check those out. Be fantastic. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all of your time.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on, and it's been really enjoyable. So very grateful.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check the description for the links to learn more and engage with the work from Jordy and Soul and the array of events which Jordy highlighted. During my stay at And Soul, I shared a guided meditation or mindfulness experience with the community, which I'd written as my expression and way of reconnecting to the natural energies of abundance and regeneration that I find around me when I'm spending time in my food forest. It seems like now is an appropriate time to share this with you too, especially since you're still listening this late in the episode. I've uploaded a recorded version which you'll find a link to in the description. Do check it out if you enjoy this type of thing, and feel free to share it with friends or let me know what you make of it. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date. I'm Helen Fisher. This is We Are Carbon, and let's keep figuring this all out together.